what we're discovering and learning is that, of course, we have had to build leader capability, think to drive, but we also must build business capacity, build to sustain. And how does that work? So what I thought we would do is we would talk a little bit about that and go through an example and show how that really can come to be. So we build capacity through 4 building blocks, and you're going to hold up a picture again for us. And this picture, you guys, represents all the synapses and the connections that are going on now inside the business. And we organize these connections into 4 building blocks: intent, intelligence, target, and implement. And we're going to break down each of these building blocks, but I'll bet there are 2 of them that most of us are pretty familiar with. Yeah, so strategic intent and implement. And the reason why is because in our industry, the learning and development industry, we spent a lot of time in those 2 areas. Strategic intent is the work that we do to determine where do we want to go and why is it that we want to go there. And then implement is the work that we do to determine, well, okay, if that's where we want to go, how far and how fast do we want to get there? Mm-hmm. Thing is, though, Reg, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I agree with your statement about when we think about business capacity, business leadership capacity, most people are familiar with this stream of activity, this stream of practices that help us to move from think about where we're going and why we're going there to how far and how fast should we go, for example, this year or this quarter, because most of business, because it's typically built on accounting cycles, right? It's typically built on the fact that we have these fiscal cycles that help us think about where are we going and how much should we bite off this year. And it started to drive how we think about capacity, build and sustain. Mm-hmm.
Right, and it gets us into this annual process.
That's
which
right.
is not helpful, right? We're always chasing that quarterly goal, that annual goal, and we're not thinking about things longer than that particular business cycle. And it gets us just into a swirl, if you will. And so when we studied exceptional leaders, we found something very interesting. We found that they actually engage in 2 additional building blocks. They add 2 bodies of work, if you will, to the business planning process. They add in market intelligence work, which is work to figure out, hey, what's really happening out there in my market? Mm-hmm. What's the truth? What are some of the things that we know? Boots on the ground type of information. That's right. They add in target work, which is work to determine, okay, well, what's the right work that we need to engage in, that we should be doing to get where we want to go? Mm-hmm. Again, it's the simple elegance, Reg, of the orchestration of the business practices of these 4 building blocks that by leadership role, again, that drive that whole idea of building capacity to both build and sustain the business. It's really such a special thing that happens as leaders work in each one of those building blocks. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I thought, it's nice to talk about it conceptually, and we love the building blocks, but what's it really look like, right? Can we do the same thing that we did with see, know, do, and unpack it just a little bit to say, what are some of those business practices that are real by leadership role? And we can. So let's take a look at market intelligence. Again, market intelligence is, you guys, about the work that we do to determine what's really going on out there in the market. So let's take a look at a business practice and how it shows up in each of the leadership roles that we've been looking at. So a team leader engages in a business practice called workflow mapping. Mapping the actions, the decisions, and the tasks that are required for their line or their team to take inputs, go through processes, and develop an output. So what does that really look like for them? When we move then to a service leader, they engage in a business practice called experience mapping. And Reg, it's this body of customer-centric thinking where they work to identify their clients and their clients' perspectives. And they also work to define business priorities that they're responsible for. But not only that, they also identify the partners that they're going to need and the plans that they need to put into place to achieve those priorities.
Their CX, their customer experience, right?
Exactly. That's what they're responsible for. And they're so mindful of how that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So the sales leader, they engage in a business practice called environment framing. And remember, for a sales leader, it's always going to be with an eye to their sales territory and the customers within it.
Mm-hmm.
So they engage in a body of work that is both external and internal. It's an external steep analysis of their territory, and they look at their territory in terms of what's going on socially. What about from a technological perspective? What about the environment and the economy and politically, what's happening that's going to impact their territory? And then they take an internal look, Reg, and they say, okay, well, based on that, what are my strengths, weaknesses, areas of opportunity and threats? They conduct a SWOT analysis so that they can have a good understanding really of their territory and how they are impacted by what's going on in their territory.
Mm-hmm.
And then from a senior leader perspective, they also engage in environment framing, but with an eye to what's happening in their industry and other industries. They're going to engage in an external steep analysis as well and an internal analysis. But remember, their focus is going to be industry focus and how does it impact my company, my organization within my industry. So how is this relevant, right? Why does this matter for the business? Well, we can use those building blocks, Reg, intent, intelligence, target, and implement to help the business really understand how implementing those targeted business practices in each one of those building blocks and aligning them to mid-term or long-term, mid-term, and short-term business planning really helps to shift the performance curve within the organization. Right. I mean, can you feel it? To me, it's just so powerful. And again, it's different nutrients in the soil for each leadership role, but nutrients that are specific to the role and tied together role to role to role to really lead for all of those who are paid to lead in the organization.